Awesome. Thanks, Gladys. And thanks, everybody, for taking a little bit out of your day today to hang out with us, to talk about facilities and technology and all the fun things that come around for that. As we're doing that, I've got, as Gladys mentioned, I've got two smaller pieces of the overall time that we've got today, really bookending the reason why you're all here of listening to and working with Lynn. But as we're doing that, just to start the first part of just a kind of a question from our side. You know something about IMAGINiT because you did receive our invitation to this meeting. You accepted it. So there's something in here that does tend to fit a little bit. But I guess I've got a little bit of a question in my mind of, do you really know who we are? And so as such, just a couple of little quick things about IMAGINiT you may or may not have been aware of, but we do have offices and locations all across North America. Recently having merged with another company, ASI, to further expand all of the regions that we can service directly and indirectly, and adding to the skills and capabilities that we've got to be able to help you make your lives a little bit better, make your lives a little bit easier perhaps in some different places. So the advantage that we've got of being a local presence to work with you in your own backyard, like being able to pull somebody from Calgary, if we needed to grab something that's got a particular piece of knowledge that can really work for you there, or somebody from Jacksonville to help out with another piece. There's just so much happening in technology and in life today that just having a deep bench like this is something to really help out with when there's just so much to be able to pay attention to. Nobody can really know it all. We do have a partnership with AUTODESK. That's probably one of the easier things to associate with IMAGINiT, of being an AUTODESK partner, and the tools that we've got to go along with that type of technology for learning how to use software in more effective ways, to be able to understand how can we get support and leverage all these different tools in functions that are going to make us a little bit better than we could be before. We've got our partnership with Archibus, which some of you may know us from that end of our business. Partnerships with Leica Geosystems, Pix4D for reality capture, laser scanning, things like that. Our own products that we've created, utilities for Civil 3D, Revit, Vault, Clarity, BIM Switch, Pulse, all these different types of things. There's a lot of cool, neat, wonderful things we've got out there that are all part of this big picture of who is IMAGINiT. Now, with that little bit there, just to make sure that there's something in here that we know, maybe a little bit of IMAGINiT doing something that you did not know before. It's like, wow, they make their own programs too. Whatever's through there, that's not maybe the most important thing. What I would like to take a minute to know is just a couple of quick little polling slides here. The idea, let me go ahead and stop sharing my screen for a minute, but the whole idea of who are you? And that'll help us flavor what we've got going on for the rest of the presentation here. So we've got really two questions for you. Hopefully you should see it on a panel on the right-hand side of your screen. What is your job profession? If you could go ahead and fill out a checkbox there. And then where are you on your overall, we'll say, BIM implementation, your BIM scale? You're the master of all you survey, or you know that BIM exists? There's something in between here. And so we'll take a little bit of time, give everybody a chance to fill in those different things of what is your profession and where are you on that scale. We'll close it out and make sure that we've got that understanding of who everybody is that's joining us in this audience for our presentation today. Maybe give it another 10 seconds for people to find that poll and answer it, and then we'll close it off and see what we've got here. That'll probably be enough time. I can't see the results as they're coming in, but if it looks like we might have them all, let's go ahead and close that poll and take a look at where we're sitting here. But that's going to be the extent of my part on at least the front end of the book end of what we've got here. With the results of what we have for the polls in here, I want to go ahead and turn it over to taking a look at what we've got for just an overall FM thing, and turn you over to the very capable hands of Ms. Lynn Allen.
Okay. Did we get to see what the results of the poll were?
I haven't seen those yet. Have we
Because I was
closed the poll, Gladys? Yeah.
That would be a valuable piece of information.
You can you just tell us what they are?
I can read them to you.
Yeah, please.
What is your job profession? We have 39% at other, 32% design professional, 25% owners, and 21% facility manager.
Okay, that's good.
And then where are you on the BIM scale? We have 32%. We have adopted BIM for some time. 57%, we are thinking about moving. 11%, what is BIM? And then finally 4%, we have fully adopted BIM.
Okay.
Okay?
Perfect. Yep, I'm switching over to my screen. And hopefully you guys can all see that.
Indeed.
We can see
all
that.
Right. All right, great. Well, I am, as I was saying earlier, I'm so excited about this presentation. It's usually when I do these BIM presentations, it's very general for all different industries, and this one is very focused on facilities managers. So if you are not a facility manager, go get some coffee now. Then you'll hear about how we need you to modify the model so that it's useful to facility managers. That's probably the part that you'll glom onto. And I am a big fan of all things BIM, and and I'm come from the AutoCAD world. Most people know me from the land of AutoCAD, and yet everywhere I travel, I see the amazing things that BIM allows companies to be successful at. So let's dive into this presentation. So one of the things, of course, that we're going to run into as we're talking about BIM, and the thing that you've probably run into, or maybe you've run into with some of your coworkers, of course, is that, it's a big change. And I absolutely believe, and I start so many of my presentations like this, it's not the change that we actually are fearing, it's the fear of the unknown. And if you could actually look into a crystal ball and see what that future looked like when you made the move to BIM, and if you knew that it was going to be better, if it was going to be amazing, if it was going to be wonderful, then you would, of course, absolutely welcome that. But there's always that fear factor, which we'll address during this presentation. So in here, I'm going to talk about some of the obstacles I'm sure you run into as a facility manager or building owner for facilities. And then also I'm going to be sharing with you the way the world could look if you are willing to embrace that change. And of course, with all change, it's uncomfortable. And of course, there's you have to get over that. So when we think about making the move over to BIM, most of us focus on the technology. We're all about, oh my gosh, it's going to be this huge change. I got to switch softwares. I got to do all this stuff. And we're all focused on the technology. But in reality, I want you to know that it actually is, it's interesting how this is taking my mouth. So you'll actually see that it's sociological much more than technology. That's what you're going to run into. You're going to run into attitudes. You're going to run into some situations that you're going to get frustrated at. And in reality, it's the sociology aspect of it, which is the bigger obstacle. Technology, the part we worry the most about is actually a very, very small piece of the pie. Now, as I mentioned, I have come from an AutoCAD background. I got involved in the very early days of AutoCAD. In fact, the version on that disk, it's not my disk, but the version on that disk is actually the first release of AutoCAD that I ever used, back when dinosaurs roamed the earth. I got involved. I was very young. I got involved in it, and I started out really primarily as an instructor to AutoCAD. And if you were wondering just exactly how long ago that was, I haven't been using it since the very beginning, thankfully. But AutoCAD's been around for 37 years, and that is a pretty long time for any software product. And when AutoCAD first came out, boy, that was a huge change, a major disruption. So everybody was going, of course, from drawing on a piece of paper to now they need to use a software program for their designs. Let me just tell you, it wasn't just making the move over to a software program. It was making the move over to a computer, because in those days, personal computers were brand new and people had no idea how to use them. As an instructor, I joked that I would tell them, okay, you guys have to hit F1, and they would hit the F key, and they would hit the 1 key. because it was totally foreign to them. It was very challenging for them. That was a massive change. At least you don't have to learn how to use a computer, right? But I will argue that as governments came along and they started mandating DWG files, that's when the world really believed that that whole CAD thing was going to catch on, and they made the shift. They were almost forced to, in many cases, to make that shift. And I'll tell you, I had more than one person in my class as I was teaching AutoCAD who would stand up and they'd say, "This is ridiculous. I could have drawn this by hand 10 times by now, and this CAD thing's never going to catch on," right? Now, maybe I wasn't a good teacher. I don't know. But nevertheless, it was a very tumultuous, disruptive time, and not everybody embraced CAD, which now we probably find somewhat amusing. I don't think there's any doubt, right, that CAD caught on. There's no doubt about that. So now we're in another scenario. So now this whole BIM thing's come along. What? I just got so good at CAD. I'm a pro at CAD. I'm sure many of you feel that way. Some of you love your AutoCAD. You have it down. You feel comfortable in that world. You know you can get your jobs done with AutoCAD. And now this huge disruption of building information modeling comes along. And it's, very similar scenario. As I can tell you, all over the world, companies, including FM folks, are adopting BIM at an amazing high rate. And the same kind of thing is happening with governments. Governments are starting to mandate BIM. Here in the U.S., all over the world, governments are starting to insist on a certain level of development of BIM for any models that have to do with publicly procured projects. So it's really, I see it happening all over again. And at some point, we won't even be having this discussion on making the move over to BIM. Let me just say, at some point, it's going to be a given. Taking a look at BIM adoption, this is according to Dodge Research and Analytics, and I do quote them quite a bit. You can see BIM adoption is literally skyrocketed in the last 5 years. And then this is a little outdated, but I think it proves the point, and I can assure you these numbers have not gone down, that this is the percentage of the industry that's using BIM on more than 60% of their projects. And you can see on here, of course, architects totally get it. They're all over it. Engineers, a little bit smaller. Contractors are actually the industry that's starting to embrace BIM the most. It's been pretty incredible the last couple of years. And then here we have owners at the end. You guys, facility managers, owners, et cetera. And those numbers are smaller. Okay, not quite as small as the engineer, though, who also like to do everything in CAD. So I will just tell you, the writing's on the wall. The AEC industry and the FM industry is definitely moving to BIM. So, and just making sure, because there were a few of you that didn't know what BIM was, I usually also go into exactly what BIM is. I will go through the advantages of BIM, but that's building information modeling, right, where you end up with a robust 3D intelligent model that's filled with all types of information with the ultimate goal, which we'll talk about, the ultimate goal of having a model that makes it through the entire life cycle of the building, from concept all the way to demolition. That's the goal. It doesn't go like that necessarily, but that's the goal. Now, one of the interesting things is with BIM, we focus so much on the early design all the way through to the completion of construction, but that's only 20% of the total cost of a building, right? And you guys in your industry, you know that 80% of the total cost of a building happens after the handover, after the building is built. And yet we place so much more emphasis on that early stage. I wonder why this isn't. Okay, sorry. You don't know what's happening over here. I keep hitting my page down. I'm using my mouse, and it's totally rebelling against me. It's not switching, so I apologize for that. I'm going to blame WebEx on that because I like to blame things on other people. So if you're listening to this webcast, I like to believe that you are one of two types of folks. You're either those who are actually managing the building, right, or you're those who manage the building space, and you know who you are. We're going to address both of you, and we'll talk about some other outside of this as well. I know there's a few other categories, but I'm going to lump you guys into those two different categories. So the first thing I want you to understand as well is that BIM is not a software. Making the move over to BIM doesn't mean that you just switched software products. You can't go down to the BIM store and buy yourself some BIM, all right? It doesn't go like that. The software is actually just a tool for BIM. So like the AEC collection or Revit, BIM 360. These are all tools to help you be successful in BIM. And I think that's a really important distinction. Even though, once again, we're all focused on the software. Am I going to be able to embrace the software? I'm going to talk to you about that. I'm going to convince you you totally can embrace the software. So this is the desired BIM project execution. As I mentioned to you, we have one model that's used throughout the entire life cycle of the building, from the very beginning of conception all the way over to the very end to demolition. So that is the goal. And if you've seen any presentations on BIM, you have seen that this is the goal with BIM. However, I find that working with facility managers, that it actually does not go like that. You have that great concept all the way through to the completion of the building, and then there's this BIM cliff, and it goes terribly wrong, and that data is not continued, the building's not continued, and people resort back to their AutoCAD drawing files. They might even redraw them all. And it doesn't go like that. The desired execution that we promised, that's not reality. In fact, reality is more like this, and you see, that's your BIM data up there, jumping off a cliff. And so, why is that? We're going to talk about why, and we're going to talk about how to fix that. That would also be ideal too, and how to get everybody headed in the right direction. But that's the reality of what's happening right now. In fact, I have a pretty good statistic for you right here. She says I can't read my numbers down. Okay. $15.8 billion every year is spent on interoperability issues in the FM industry. Okay, that is, dealing with data, losing data, recreating data. It's not pretty. And that's according to Gallagher, in case you want to look that up. And incidentally, $10 billion of that expense is at the owner's expense, for you building owners who tuned in today. So you are the ones who are bearing the brunt of this lack of interoperability. Holy cow. So slow. Come on, you can do it. There we go. So why don't facility managers embrace BIM? Let's talk about that, because in many cases, I get it. I totally get it. I'm not going to sit here and say you guys don't know what you're doing. I understand. Let's look at these obstacles. It's no wonder in some cases. So first off, the BIM models are built for constructability and not for maintainability. So they're meant to construct a building. They're not intended to move on past that to help you maintain the building, all right? And I'll also say that this is, if you're not handed hopefully something like this, because that would be super scary. But the point is that you are being handed models that have too much information in them, way too much information. You do not need to know about the rebar in the chemistry room. You probably don't care about that. You care about much more important things than that. And in addition to too much information, you are not getting the right data, right? So the data that you need to have isn't even in the model. And that is making it very difficult for you to embrace BIM. So I'm not surprised. We're going to help fix that, though. Absolutely going to help fix that. There's also a change in process. Once again, a lot of us fear change. We've already got it figured out. So changing process is another reason why you have not fully embraced BIM. There's a change in software, as I mentioned to you before as well. So here we have a scenario where you guys, let's say AutoCAD's faded out there, and you might need to make the move you might need to learn Navisworks, you might need to learn Revit, you might need to learn the BIM 360 products, or some other software as well to be successful when you make the move over to BIM. So that's another, fear factor. Another reason that you might run into is that, you've already figured out how to get your job done, right? You've got it all set up with your existing systems. And there's that fear that if you do make the move over to BIM, it's going to take you longer because you're going to have to keep the model updated. So that's a fear, by the way. That's not reality, but there's that thought process. Oh my gosh, I'm going to have to go in and update everything in the model every time, which, by the way, you're doing anyway with the AutoCAD. And it's much easier to update a model and have it permeate through all the construction docs and all the documentation, as opposed to individually updating all the AutoCAD sheets. But nevertheless, there is a fear that it will take you longer to do it in the model. And then if you make this move, you're going to need some training. And I'm a huge advocate of training. You heard me earlier. I came from the training industry. You can learn this on your own, but are you going to learn it the right way? And I want you to learn it the right way. and we'll talk about recommendations on how to do that. But I know often, especially, I know that we have quite a few colleges and universities online. Getting training dollars is not easy, which I find just a little ironic since your university is all about education. But that it's not always to get enough, not always easy enough to get enough training dollars to be successful as you're making this move over to BIM, and that's a really important thing. And as I mentioned before, you're good at your system. You probably know that your current system is inefficient. However, it gets the job done, right? It works. I need to make sure that it works, correct? I know you know it's a little inefficient. We all know that. And then I just wanted to throw this in. I have yet to work at a facility where there isn't that one maintenance guy that knows where everything is anyway. I don't need to document it because Joe knows where everything is and he knows how to fix everything. And I think that this cartoon kind of hones that in. Okay, well, that's great as long as Joe doesn't decide to retire or he decides to move somewhere else, go work somewhere else. So much knowledge is lost in the land of FM, with people coming and going. That happens all the time. That's another reason why documentation is so important. All right, so and then to me, the number one reason why you're not embracing BIM, of course, goes back to that original slide with just the big fear of change. And I don't blame you. I totally get it. So let's talk about why you should embrace BIM. Now, I realize that you guys love all that paperwork that you have to go through, all the O&M manuals, all that as-built information. And I know you love rifling through all of that to try to find answers. But it can be better than that. It can be much better than that. BIM is well-populated, it's searchable, and it's easy for you to get those queries done. You're going to be able to access information so much faster. I mean, literally, you're going to have like one click versus mounds of paperwork that you need to go through, right? Plus, you have to update all that paperwork. If it's even been updated, you're supposed to update it. You probably don't. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. Nevertheless, there is a huge advantage just right there. And then let me ask you this. How long does it take for you after construction before you get that building information anyway? If this was a live audience and I asked that question, I'd get at least one hand up that said a year. And what are you supposed to do in the meantime, right? You've got this building you need to work with. You need to figure out. So what if it didn't go like that? What if you immediately got the information from the as-built? That would be fantastic, right? And now you have one single source of truth. You don't have those thousands of pieces of paper and those documents and the manuals, whatever you convince them to hand over to you. You have one single source of truth. I mean, you can still have them give you all that. I'm fine with that. You have this model that's one single source of truth. And as long as you keep that model updated, your documentation is going to be 100% accurate, and you're going to be able to make smart, educated decisions as you continue to manage your building. And as far as the maintenance team is concerned, it's such a better life for them because there is no longer the mystery. There's not you going out and trying to find the documentation. It's in one handy spot. In many cases, they can use a mobile device. And just put yourself in this scenario. Okay, so let's say there's a really noisy fan in the chemistry department. All right, so loud that nobody can, it's just too distracting for the student. So the maintenance man or woman, let's not be a bit gender biased here, is supposed to go out and fix it, right? So if you have a robust, smart, intelligent BIM model, he has the ability to look up all the information about that fan before he even gets there. He doesn't have to move any ceiling panels when he gets there to try to find it because he'll know exactly where it is. He'll know the model number. He can look up the information about that particular fan. He can look at the manual. He can show up with the spare part. He can make sure he has the right tools for when he gets there. So here you have a scenario where you might have the opportunity where maintenance could actually get the job done the first go round, which doesn't happen that often, right? When they usually end up doing a query first, and then they go back and get whatever it is to be successful in that particular job. So maintenance can cut down on the time for each task, and they can also limit the number of trips to get something done. And let me tell you, that adds up to some serious dollars over time. They also have the ability to have X-ray vision into a building. So as I was mentioning to you before, I don't want to move all the different ceiling panels to try to find it. I certainly don't want to punch holes. Have you ever seen that scenario? let's say some of you are working with these, amazing historic buildings. You want to just be able to know exactly what's behind the wall, what's behind the ceiling, and you want to know where everything is so that you can maintain the building with the least amount of damage to the building, of course, and the least amount of time and the least amount of money. You have X-ray vision into the building. So you'll hear people talk about a digital twin. And for those of you who are new to BIM, you are actually creating a digital twin of a real-life physical asset, more than likely of a building, as far as we're talking about today. So you have a 3D model, a smart, intelligent 3D model that knows all there is to know about that building, and you have the actual, of course, physical building, right? But they're digital. It's a digital twin, so they echo each other. So you don't have to go out to the site to get information, which is really, really important, which is kind of where we're going at right here. So you have improved quantity takeoffs and cost estimating. You don't have to do the dreaded polylining anymore. I don't think that's going to make any of you sad. You can have an improved building maintenance scheduling. You can build all of that into the model. Accurate surface information. Let me explain to you what I mean by that. That could be how much glass you have in a building, so you can figure out how much you need to pay a window cleaner. It could be how many sidewalks you have, so you know how much you're going to pay somebody to plow the snow, right? It could be painting. How much paint do I need? Oh my gosh, we love to measure. We love to go out multiple times to measure walls for painting. I swear we do. You don't have to do that. You can find all that information out very quickly. Once again, with very little work, you can find all that out. And you can do things like insurance estimates. You can do flooring estimates, and the information you get is going to be very, very accurate. And that is going to help you get your jobs done and be more successful. And then another part of your job, right, is to keep the operating costs as low as possible. With a true building information model, you can monitor the energy and the water use. You can take a look at how the air conditioning is working. You can add in that lights are on dimmers. You can figure out the energy that's being taken to run those lights. You can lower the operating costs and just generally make greener decisions, which is very, very important, right? Now sustainability is becoming a bigger part of our job. Not only does it save money in many cases, but we care about the environment. You can do analyses, energy analysis. You can do simulations. You can take a look at how that air conditioning is working in a building. You can verify that the HVAC is at its maximum potential, that it's being efficient. You can do all kinds of simulations. You can find out using a variety of software tools, but you can actually find out if there was a fire, what route that smoke would take, maybe in a parking lot, maybe in a building. It can help you with emergency situations, so you can make suggestions on how to get out of a building quickly. You can do analyses, environmental analyses. There's so many, you can do earthquake simulations. There's so much you can do when you have a real model. It's pretty fascinating. And then I just threw this in, I'm going to tell you because I find it amusing. I'm not sure if any of you remember, but this was a pretty recent, there's a building in London called the Walkie-Talkie Building. And one of the things you can do with the BIM model is you can do a sun study. So you could actually see what the effect the sun would have at any point in the day on your building. And in this scenario, that on the right, you're probably having a hard time figuring out exactly what that is. It used to be it's a Jaguar that got totally melted down from the sun. Like, it's a good thing there was nobody in it because it would have gone really, really badly. But it's because of the light on that building, it just zeroed in on this Jaguar XJ and totally melted it. It wasn't pretty, let me just say. So what else have you got? Well, how about safety? That's another part of your role in many cases. And let's say you were doing a remodel and you knew that you needed to punch some holes for the system. Well, you don't have to do that up in the air, which is not safe. You can do that on the ground because you're going to know exactly where those systems need to go. You know where to punch those holes. There's no reason you wouldn't know where they go. So that increased certainty to me is one of the keys with the building information model, that digital twin. And you can make smart decisions, super smart decisions. Okay, I know I've got a bunch of space planners probably on the line here. So what do you need to do? Well, you need room information. You can query room information very, very easily, very quickly. You know, where's Joe sitting? How big is his office? Whatever it is that you need to know, you can query that information. There's improved asset tracking and management. Now, once again, as long as you have the data in the model. So the model, we'll talk about that, how you get that data in the model, but very important that of course, you may have to do some work to get all the right data in the model. Hopefully you don't. You have better communication and visualization, which I'm going to talk about in more detail as well. And for those of you, you're doing these space surveys, right? They're going to be more accurate and, once again, improve decisions. As you are trying to figure out the space planning, you're going to be able to make better decisions because it's going to be much more visual, and you'll have a lot more data at your fingertips. And I know that many of you have to identify swing spaces whenever there's a renovation. There was actually a recent study that said one of the biggest issues with universities and colleges for facilities managers was having to constantly identify these swing spaces when changes occur. Maybe you need to move a classroom, and maybe you just need to move a lot of material, whatever the situation is. You will be much more effective when you have a building information model to help you make those decisions. And some of you are also doing remodels and renovations. And in your scenario, you have a choice. Are you going to continue to do those designs in a flat 2D environment, or are you going to make the move over to a smart, robust 3D environment? So if you decide to make the move, there are a lot of advantages for you. You can avoid, if you already have a digital twin, if you already have a building information model, you're not going to run into those situations where you don't know where the electrical panel is. Just like I was talking about before, you're going to be able to see through that building and make educated decisions as you continue to rebuild, remodel, or to renovate. And you'll have better coordination in scheduling, and you'll have much fewer change orders, which if I was doing a general BIM presentation, that is really one of the biggest advantages is all the money that you save on all those change orders, because everybody can see everything up front. You can make smart decisions. You don't have to make as many changes. There's not as many RFIs, requests for information. There's just so many advantages for those of you who are actually going to be remodeling or doing renovations. And you'll also be able to, as you're, depending on, what your remodel is, if you need to put any systems into place, you can eliminate clashes before they happen. You don't want ductwork, running into pipes, running into electric, whatever the scenario is. You don't want things running into each other. That goes badly. And you don't want to find out during the construction phase that that's the deal. So that's a huge selling point with BIM, is that you can actually run clash detections on a model to make sure that does not happen. That, as you can imagine, saves you a lot of money. And then let's talk a little bit about visualization. I'm hoping that you guys can see this video here. This is a Starbucks actually in Japan. Maybe you have a Starbucks that you have on your campus. That would be pretty great. And for those of you who are working for colleges or universities. And how wonderful when you're doing a remodel or a renovation and you need to sell it to the powers that be, to be able to show them exactly what they're going to get. In this situation, you can literally do a walkthrough. And this looks really hard, right? This looks like, oh my gosh, I could never do this. You're probably rolling your eyes right now at me. Guess what? Not that hard. I'm telling you, it's not that hard. You can do it. Once you have that Revit model, taking it into an environment like this, not difficult. Even I've done it. It's fun. Why is it fun? The software is highly intelligent, and with very little work on your part, you can create some amazing walkthroughs and fly-throughs, which look hard. That's the good part. You're going to be a star because people are going to think it was super hard for you to do it. But in reality, it's a pretty easy process. There's a lot of bang for your buck there. And as I mentioned a little bit earlier, better communication and visualization, right? Okay, so even the savviest of owners have a hard time visualizing a building before it's constructed. Okay, the visualization of a space within a building is even harder to visualize, after construction. You need to talk about the inside spaces. That's not going to be that easy to visualize either. So if you can present some nice renderings or those fly-throughs like I showed you before, you're going to be able to get buy-in. Everybody's going to be on the same page. There won't be surprises later when they're like, that's not the way I thought it was going to look. It's just really the better route to take for everybody. And everybody has to communicate their designs in some way, shape, or form. And as you know, not everybody can read a 2D drawing. And then I just thought I'd throw these in because it's kind of fun. So here, less chance of miscommunication, right? I mean, we've seen so many examples of just bad architecture that goes badly. And let's say you are doing a remodel, or you're adding in an escalator or something to that extent. You wouldn't want this to happen, right? I like to believe this wouldn't happen. I just have to ask myself, how did it get so far? At some point in time, wasn't it like, hey, Steve, I don't think this is going to work? But apparently not. Apparently not. You also have, once again, still have less chance of communication. I just like to put this picture in because I consider this an actual half bath, right? That would not happen if you had a BIM model. And then I love this scenario. This was actually just printed not that long ago in AEC magazine, which we'll talk about here. And this is a light in the atrium that has failed. This is at the University of West England. Okay, it's really high up there, by the way. Somebody needs to replace the light bulb. Easier said than done. So this is what they did. Okay, they got a specialized spider mobile elevated working platform to change that light bulb. And then they realized that if they brought that equipment in, it was going to ruin the tile. So then they had to put wooden boards underneath the feet. But even in that situation, a bunch of them still cracked, by the way. It didn't fix it. They probably brought it in to begin with, realized some cracked, and then they decided to try to fix it. But nevertheless, it didn't go well. And they had a hard time getting this monster into the building to begin with, as you can imagine, right? And here you can see, here's the guy up there, and he is, changing the light bulb. Now, this is the point of this whole story. And once again, thanks to AEC Magazine for giving me this. I love this example. If you were to replace a standard light fit, I don't know how much it costs for you, but according to this particular study, they said that maybe it would take a half-hour labor at that would cost basically like $20, let's say. Just a regular light bulb, $20 for the maintenance crew to go out and change it. Okay, just so you know how much it costs them to change this light bulb, $1,000. Okay, there's your ROI right there. Now, this is the point I want to make, is that originally this was an AutoCAD drawing. Now, I don't know how many people would be able to visualize exactly where the problem would be here. I wouldn't be able to tell. It wouldn't even cross my mind that I'd have to worry about the nightmare of changing that light bulb. Now, even if that was the case, where somebody could recognize this, let's say, and even if the client said, well, we need a light up there, it's okay, I can accommodate, I'm willing to put up with this difficulty in changing the light bulb, maybe you would at least change the floor tiling so it wouldn't crack when you brought the machine in. You'd make it easier to bring that spider contraption in to change the light bulb, right? You would just make sure you could accommodate the equipment. This is a 3D model. And I know that you guys would be able to realize right up front, if you saw this, if you were involved in the process early on, you would see that and you would probably flag it as an issue. Is the architect going to flag it? Probably not. The construction guys, probably not. Engineers, probably not. But you would go, hey, that's going to be difficult to change. I have one of those in my house. I have lights in my house that when they go out, no one's going to fix them. I can't reach them. And it wasn't very safe, right? You're adding in a safety factor there. That's not that safe for that guy to be going up there. Let's not make it any more difficult and any more less safe than we have to, right? That's also part of your job. All right, so I talked about why I could see why you hadn't made the move, and then I shared with you some of the advantages of making the move. So let's talk about how you're going to bridge that gap between the design team and FM. As I mentioned to you, you are getting this 3D model with lots of information, but just not the information that you need. And part of the reason for that is that the design teams and the FM teams have very different focuses. What's important to you is not important to them. As I mentioned to you, constructability versus manageability, maintainability, sorry. I made up the phrase and I don't even know it. So the BIM folks, at least the design team, I should say, not necessarily BIM, but originally BIM is focused on this, construction, design intent, and maybe fabrication, right? Whereas FM, you guys are focused on space management, maintenance management, and energy performance. All right, so there's no similarity, incidentally, between the goals for those two teams. So how are you going to get what you need in the model? Well, let me tell you how you're going to get what you need in the model. First of all, You're going to talk with the building owner. He's going to want you to have the data that you need because you're going to be more successful. You're going to save him a lot of money, right? But you need to be invited to the table early in the process, not at handover. In the very beginning, you need to be invited over. And I mean, FM is vitally important in the programming, in the design, and the construction phases of the project, and yet they are not invited in. So you're going to have to start to insist on that. Not that they won't let you in, it's just they're not processing that they should let you in. And what you need should be clearly articulated. I threw some Spice Girls in there for you. Just tell me what you want, what you really, really want. You have to tell them what you really, really want to have included in the model. Maybe it's signage information or egress information, room data. I'm sure you want that. Or you need usernames and then room areas and departments and furnitures and finishes. I mean, I could go on and on and on. But you have the information that you want, and all different FM departments are different. You need to make sure that that information is included in the model before they hand it over to you. My opinion. And then guess what? It's going to take them more work to do that, right? Because they're not used to doing that. So the entire project team needs to understand that there's going to be more effort required to do it, but that they got to do it anyway. They have to be willing to put that effort into it. And then as far as I'm concerned, there's a BIM execution plan that holds all of the deliverables in it, and you need to be part of the deliverable. Very, very important. That information needs to be part of the deliverable. So there's no question about it. The building owner can make that happen. He's the boss. He can make it happen. The data needs to be in a format that you can use. You have software that you're using. You don't have to throw your software away. Like using AutoDesk, it works just as great with Revit as it does with AutoCAD. So you need to have the data in a format that can be assimilated for the software that you're using. And you can demand that. Maybe you're using Kobe or whatever the scenario is, XML, whatever. Okay, so this is the scary part, the change in software. Doesn't need to be scary. You guys are making it scary. So first off, I want to say, and the change in software, like I mentioned to you before, it could be Revit, it could be maybe also Navisworks, maybe also the BIM 360 product, variety of things that you might need to learn. So first off, I don't actually think that everybody on the FM team needs to learn Revit, at least not at first. Unless they're going to be updating the model or working with the model, or if they're doing remodels themselves or new buildings, for example, they're going to need to learn Revit. But on the FM team, unless somebody's going to be going in and putting information back into the model themselves, I don't know that everybody needs to learn Revit, so not everybody needs to panic. Even they shouldn't be panicking at all. This nice picture illustrates it. The attitude is everything. And that goes back to that 10% technology and 90% sociology, in that it's a very can-do attitude that you absolutely have to have. And you're going to get your design projects done faster once you do make the move over to BIM. And I really like this example. This was done a few years ago, but it still holds true. This is by a gentleman, a fabulous guy named David Cohn, who's a good friend of mine. He's an AutoCAD guru, been using AutoCAD longer than me. And he learned Revit. Not a Revit guru, probably is by now, but it's not like he wrote the book on Revit by any stretch of the imagination, not when this was done for sure. So this was the goal. This is a hospital edition that was built in 1979, and they only had paper drawings. And the goal was to create 10 sheets of construction documents for this add-on there, this edition, and to do it in AutoCAD and to also do it in Revit. And there were 10 sheets of construction documents, by the way, and it's a 2-story hospital edition, just some data for you. So hopefully you can see this. You don't have a really tiny screen because the print is kind of small. But as you can see, the floor plans, you're not going to save any time when you do that in Revit on a floor plan. That takes the same amount of time as it does in AutoCAD. But where you really start to see the value is when it comes to those construction documents, all right? Elevations are super easy because they're just taken off of that 3D model. Reflected ceiling plans also can be taken. They take a little bit more time to do reflected ceiling plans, I'm not going to lie, in Revit. Can't exactly just take it off the model, but nevertheless, it takes quite a bit less time than it would inside of AutoCAD. Schedules and renderings and any type of coordination and publishing, all of that takes much less time than it does inside of AutoCAD. So that's just one example. I can share that with you trying to convince somebody they should make the move. And really my favorite thing about Revit is, you know, you focus on the model, and then all those construction documents that take forever to generate, they're all generated from the model. You just take them right off the model. They just come from the model. You pull them right off, and they're always up to date. When you make a change to the model, it changes it everywhere, which I always love to talk about as well. So you could just spend more time in the design development than you do in those pesky, tedious construction documents. I mean, come on, admit it, they're boring. Come on, dimensioning, boring, the same. So Revit is much more front-loaded, though, than AutoCAD. You're going to spend more time in the early stage in that creating the model in the beginning than you are with the construction documents at the end. And it's going to feel funny to you, and you're going to say, this is taking too long. I could have done this by now in AutoCAD. Maybe you could have, but you're not going to have that super smart 3D model that you can continue to use to its advantage. If some of you are in AutoCAD Architecture, by the way, I just want to let you know that it's, in my view, easier to go from AutoCAD Architecture to Revit than it is to go from AutoCAD to Revit. You're already used to working with objects as opposed to lines, arcs, and circles. And if you've been using the Project Navigator, oh my gosh, your move to Revit is going to be so much smoother. And this is why I mentioned it to you, because I know most of you are probably just using vanilla AutoCAD. But if you're on subscription, you have access to AutoCAD Architecture for free. So if for some reason you're listening to this, you're like, I just can't do it, Lynn. I can't make the move to Revit yet. I can't do it. Maybe you can make the move to AutoCAD Architecture, because it's based on AutoCAD, still has a command line. It's based on AutoCAD, and it's a great stair step. It's like, you know, 1.5 BIM or whatever. It's almost there. Half BIM, the half BIM. So it's a good step in the right direction, though. So I would totally salute you for doing that. One of the biggest changes for you as an AutoCAD user is realizing that Revit puts all the files into one database. There's one model, one database filled with all this information, and you don't have a whole bunch of individual drawing files. And that's so confusing for an AutoCAD user and so hard to wrap your head around. It will probably drive you absolutely crazy, but nevertheless, that's the route you need to take to have this smart, intelligent model. Don't fight it. It's better than it sounds. So let me give you some Revit facts to help you feel better. Revit's easier to learn than AutoCAD. If you can learn AutoCAD, you can learn Revit. Did you know that AutoCAD is one of the hardest programs in the world to learn? You should pat yourself on the back if you are any good at AutoCAD. It is a tough product to learn. It's an old product. It's, you know, the user interface has been updated, but nevertheless, man, there's like 7 ways to do anything in AutoCAD, as opposed to it's much more streamlined in Revit. Revit's based on newer technology. It was written specifically for AEC applications. I'm going to add FM on there just to make you feel better. But AutoCAD was built all things for all people. It's a generic product. So you're not dealing with lines, arcs, and circles. You're dealing with walls and doors and windows and things that you are very familiar with. And when the model changes in Revit, as I mentioned to you before, it changes it everywhere. It's automated across multiple sheets and views. It's just such a beautiful thing. You don't have to do any more of that evil polylining. It's much less tedious. And one of the biggest fears I feel that people making the move to Revit is the fact that you're working in 3D. And that might be because you tried to do 3D in AutoCAD. And let me tell you, I don't like 3D in AutoCAD. I said it. It's hard. I said that too. So you can't look at the Revit 3D like AutoCAD 3D at all. The Revit 3D is much more intuitive. A lot of it's generated automatically, so you don't even have to think about it. And it's just, something flashed on my screen. I hope you guys can still hear me okay. It's just a much easier route to take to get to 3D. And so please don't judge it on your experience from AutoCAD. And then after the learning curve, you're going to get your job done faster, which is always a good thing, unless you get paid by the hour, I guess. And that whole change it once, change it everywhere, as I keep mentioning, because to me that's just such a big deal. You know, your call-outs are always going to be accurate. The schedules are always going to be automatically updated. If you did it to delete an object that was tagged, that tag's removed. You don't have to go running around counting everything. Your elevations, your sections, your CDs are all updated when the model is changed. How much time is that going to save? It's amazing. And then Revit has some really handy tools for importing your CAD data. So you don't have to throw all your CAD data away. And we'll just briefly talk about exactly, what you might consider still taking into the Revit model. But you see, look, there's a linked CAD option, there's an import CAD option. So you can bring your DWG files into Revit, maybe like your details, for example. If you are creating new files, you're doing, once again, maybe a remodel or a whole new building, for example, on campus, for example, that you are somehow involved in, those details don't have to be recreated. You can use them. There's no reason to. Just bring those on into Revit. And maybe you have a floor plan already. You probably do in AutoCAD, right? You've got the existing floor plan. There's no reason why you can't go ahead and bring that into Revit and use that to get going on creating your model. And the links can be dynamic if you want, like XREF, so that if you update the AutoCAD drawing, it will update in Revit. You can do it like that. I mean, that's completely up to you. Ideally, you just go over and are just using the Revit model. You don't have to jump into BIM with both feet to begin with. When you do, you're going to have the highest return on investment. But, start small if you have to, whatever makes you feel more comfortable. And then here's some reality, and I wanted to make it sound like it's all a pretty picture. Maybe I didn't make it sound like it was a pretty picture, but you're not going to move to BIM overnight, right? It's going to take time. It's the change in process, change in software. It takes time. You may need to invest in better hardware because that big file, it's a big file. By the time you get it, I'm sure you've seen that. Those are big files because there's so much information in there. And in the beginning, it's going to take you more time to do your project. So don't be doing this. I could, just like the hand drafters, I could have drawn this on a piece of paper 10 times by now. No, you don't be saying the whole, I could have drawn this 10 times in AutoCAD by now, because there's so much more value in the model than there is in a flat 2D AutoCAD drawing. All right, here's my plug for training. I'm from the training industry. I'm big into training. I'm big into hands-on training. I'm big into you getting out of the office and going to an IMAGINiT training center. They're AutoDesk training centers, authorized AutoDesk training center, sitting down, getting away from your meetings, away from the other distractions, and learning the software. And once again, you could probably learn it on your own, but are you going to learn it the right way on your own? Highly doubtful. And timing is important. Don't take the training and then not have any BIM project for 6 months. You've really completely wasted your training. And so you're going to need to show the ROI in making the move over to BIM to get the approval for these increased dollars so that you can get trained. And there's a variety of different ways you can get trained. I told you hands-on training, online training. Some of you don't live near an IMAGINiT, and maybe you can't get the funding to go visit them. Make sure you visit the one in, do they have one in Hawaii? I don't know. I got to go to the one in Hawaii. But there's also online training. There's what?
We're working on it.
You're working on it. Okay. All right.
Not really,
well,
but I thought I'd say that.
Make that move until there's one in Hawaii. I'm sure they have some in some great locations that you can visit. Maybe you visit your relatives or something at the same time. But if for some reason you don't live by one, there's also online training that IMAGINiT offers, which is another route for you to take. I still prefer an instructor over my shoulder sorting me out when I can't figure it out. But, that's another option for you. There's a bunch of YouTube videos. I say after you've learned the software that you can continue to hone your skills on. I'm sure that IMAGINiT also has advanced classes to help you out. But some of us love YouTube videos. There's some great Autodesk University sessions on FM and BIM. I highly recommend that you take a look at those. They're free to watch. And then as time goes on, I'm a big fan of Lunch and Learns, where people share what they've learned about the software or about the BIM process with others so that everybody can be successful. And then, once again, work with your Autodesk partner. IMAGINiT can provide training for you, and they can also help you as you're trying to figure out what route you need to take to make the move to BIM. They can be your, trusted advisor, your best BIM friend to help you be successful, because, you don't want to do it alone. The first project you pick, could you pick a good one? Don't pick a stadium. That's really complicated. You might want to pick something that's a little less work than that. You're going to want to pick something that's simple, like maybe it's a new design project for a remodel or something like that, but it should be not too complicated. And you don't want it to be on a super fast track time schedule. That's not really fair to you. Or it could be an existing AutoCAD project that could really benefit by making the move over to BIM and over to Revit. That's another option for you. But your goal on this first project is not to be stressing about the design. You want to be focusing on learning the software, and that's really important. So if you have a time constraint in there, you're going to be stressing. Upper management really, I need to be quiet. Upper management needs to be supportive and patient, and they need to, if they're not behind you, it's going to be, I'm not going to lie, it's going to be hard for you to be successful. So we really need to win over upper management to have a successful move to BIM. You will have people who complain. That's just the nature of the beast. You're still going to have AutoCAD users, once again, who are going to tell you they could have already had it done. But you need to look at the big picture and the advantages that you'll have from that fabulous model. And if I were in a live audience, I always have a few Revit people in the audience, and then I say, hey, would you like to go back to using AutoCAD? And let me tell you, nobody ever says yes. Once you make the move to Revit and you really understand it, you're not going to want to go back. In fact, that's another reason to have the AutoCAD folks still that are focused on AutoCAD, because you're not going to want to do anything in AutoCAD. And there's still some, there's still be some old projects, of course, that could utilize AutoCAD. It doesn't make sense for everything to be converted over right away. So I'm going to just kind of leap through here very quickly. Your facility is going to be seen as more progressive if you make the move over to BIM. You're going to be able to get more done with less. You can do more projects, less money. And then this is one of my favorites. I wanted to make sure I did mention this. So from a personal standpoint, let's just take your company hat off. What about you? Boy, if I had a company that was willing to train me on BIM and or Revit and or any other software products, I'm always all over that. You will be much more valuable in the working industry. You're going to be able to add this to your resume and eventually, ideally make more money as a result of that. I mean, I'm big into always trying to improve our skill set and stay up with the times and not lag behind so that we are marketable just in case something goes wrong, right? You're going to want to be able to get a job. Just saying, throwing it out there. So let me jump to the very end here. The most dangerous phrase in the language is we've always done it that way, and I know you've heard it. You might have said it. I might have said it at some point. It's not a good phrase to use. It's going to hold you back and keep you from being successful. And I beg you, do not go back to your 2D ways, please. All right, I went over my time, Joe. I'm so sorry. But anyway, if you have any additional questions, there's my email address at the bottom of the screen there, and I'm happy to answer them. As you can see, I'm extremely passionate about this, and I'm happy to help you out if you have any needs. Need to convince somebody, and I can help. And really, IMAGINiT is there to help you as well. They can provide some pretty amazing information to help you be successful in convincing others. And that, I'm shutting up now, Joe. It's all about you. It's all about you now.
Woohoo!
Yeah.
No, and I think as we're looking at that, let's see here. I'm going to need to let you make me a presenter. If you can right-click on, stop sharing and right-click on my name and make me a presenter, or Gladys can do it. I just got one
You are on the screen now. Are you okay?
As a follow-up. There we go.
Okay.
Just one piece that I wanted to share. And again, with the idea of bookending things, what is the piece that we can do to work with you, to help you with this process? And among other things, answering all the questions and things that Lynn was bringing up, how are you going to collect the data? Where is that data going to live? Does it live in a model, in a building model? Does it live in a different facilities database? How do they talk to each other? All those different types of things are items that we're looking to help really all of our clients, anybody who works in facilities or ownership of buildings, to answer, resolve, and get that roadmap to the end. So as such, we have a kind of a BIM for Owners Smart Start, not kind of, it really is, that takes into account all these different things. Is there a need for capturing the reality of your space and your campuses and your buildings? Whatever, is it need to be tape measure good enough? Do we need to get some sort of a laser scanner in there? What are the things we need to do to get you where you want to be? And that's with this. So if you're interested in all those things, you want to be able to get to us and so say, what is that next step? Where can we go? We saw all these things. The vision that Lynn painted is awesome. It's wonderful. How do we get there? This is where we can help. Let's start talking about this idea of a BIM for Owners, a smart start, and then reach out to us. If you need to, in addition to Lynn's information that she provided. If you've got questions that we can help you with, info@rand.com, our website, the 800 number. Please just get in touch with us. Let's see what we can do to make your life a little bit